Okay, so I could not sleep last night, so I woke up in the middle of the night and decided that I wanted to watch a movie, specifically a Tyler Perry movie, because somebody on my YouTube asked me to like review some of his movies. Chose Acrimony because it was free and it was on Tubi. Acrimony came out in 2018. It stars Taraji P. Henson and Lyric Bent. I do not know who Lyric Bent is. I don't. I understand why Tyler Perry picked him because I think he's pretty handsome. And it's funny, I have a sneaking suspicion that me and Tyler Perry have the same taste in men because, like, I can always look forward to some eye candy in his movies. Either way, the movie starts out in a courtroom. Makes perfect sense for a Tyler Perry movie. There's always some kind of judgment aspect, some authority figure that is passing down judgment. So immediately, our main character, Melinda, is being sentenced to counseling and therapy, and she's being given a restraining order because she has been stalking and harassing her ex husband and his new lady. The way that Taraji plays Melinda to me is just kind of interesting because it's like you don't know if she's an unreliable narrator or not. Everything that she's saying sounds legit, and she may be putting her own slant on things, but it sounds like she has good reason to go crazy and to go off and be as upset as she is throughout this entire movie. But the way that she tells her story, it sounds like she's trying to get us to be sympathetic to her, but we're not supposed to be. This whole movie is extremely confusing to me. And if I could ask Tyler Perry one question when it comes to this entire movie, Acrimony, my question would be, what do you want from us as the audience? Like, how do you want us to feel? Also, is this Chris Brown? Because this guy looks just like Chris Brown. Like, who is this guy? Let me IMDb him. His name is Terrell Hill. So it's not sea breezy. Anyway, here's the story. The main character, her name is Melinda. She gets with this young man. They have a cute meet in college. And I ran into him. Pretty paint by numbers, the two become an item and so on and so forth. But one thing that's really interesting about this movie is that it feels very surreal. The entire movie feels like kind of like a David Lynch film in that you never know what is going to happen and what it all means. For example, when the boy, his name is Robert, goes to Melinda's dorm in order to give her the papers that he dropped when they ran into each other, look at how Melinda's best friend slash roommate answers the door.
Hi. Is Melissa here?
There's no Melissa here. Oh, Melinda. What do you want?
Like, I don't understand why that character was acting in that way, but it leads to nothing. Like, she does not hit on this guy, but there are moments in the movie where I'm like, is this supposed to mean something? Because later on, there's another scene that's a little bit weird. Before I get into that, there's a bunch of other stuff. So this guy starts to ruin this young woman's life. Her mom dies and leaves her a bunch of money, $350,000, and this young man suddenly starts becoming financially needy. She starts lending him money. She buys him a car. He cheats on her as thanks for that, I guess. And she loses her temper and she drives into the trailer that he lives, knocking it over. And in the meantime, she gets injured and has to get a full hysterectomy. It is a whole entire mess. And that's the thing with Tyler Perry's movies. They always kind of feel like you're listening to gossip. Like there's no rhyme or reason to anything that happens. It's just like, ooh, girl, let me tell you about Melinda. Naturally, Melinda's loved ones, specifically her two sisters, are very upset about Robert and what he's done. They didn't like him from the beginning. Now they really don't like him and they want him out of her life. But I did notice this one little moment with this one, her roommate.
Get out! Go. I'll call you.
What was that? Anyway, the two get together. They eventually get married. As you can see, there is a bad wig in the background. That's the officiant of the wedding. I don't understand. It's like, I'm back to the question. How do you want us to feel, Tyler Perry? How do you want us to feel? Is this a comedy movie? It could have ended right after he cheated and it would have just been a happy ending that these two didn't end up together. But here they are getting married and this boy starts to drain her pockets. The $350,000 that her mom gave her is gone. She spends the rest on anything that he needs. helps to put him through school. He graduates and he has one good idea, just one. And all he needs to do is get this idea to a white guy named Mr. Prescott. In the meantime, like I said, the money is going, going, going. And the way that Tyler Perry writes his films, and I hate to say this, he writes his movies like a poor person. Like he's putting the numbers on the screen, like look how much money they done spent. Look, she ain't got that much money left. Now she got to work 2 jobs and blah blah blah. Like he writes this movie like a poor. He writes his movies like a poor person. Talked about this before in other videos, but when you don't have a lot of money, you're always doing math, always. And there were so many scenes in this movie where the characters are just randomly doing math. Maybe this is just my personal theory. I could be wrong, but like I feel like when you are struggling financially, you're always doing math in your head. And so when he was putting those numbers up on the screen and then it's just going into the red, it was just very stressful. And only someone who has experienced this kind of struggle can understand what it feels like, you know? So 18 years goes by and these two are still struggling. And this man has that one good idea that he's just trying to sell to some like rich and important man named Mr. Prescott. This is where things get very, very weird because if I was wondering if there was an agenda here, now I'm pretty sure there is an agenda here. I think we are supposed to start liking this guy and start disliking her after all of these years of her standing by him and working day and night to support his dream. It starts to feel like maybe his dream is never going to come to fruition, but we see that he hasn't been cheating on her. You know, he's still doing right by her, and he just, you know, he has a hard time finding a job because he has a record. It's starting to feel like propaganda. It just so happens that the woman that he had that affair with all those years ago works for Mr. Prescott, and hey, you know, maybe him and her can get lunch. And oh no, her wallet was found in his truck because he had a business lunch and it had nothing to do with them having an affair. Honey, you're just being paranoid. It feels like this movie is a narcissist fantasy. Man who has used up all of a woman's money, who has cheated on her, who has caused her physical pain, who is causing her to become alienated from her family. A man who's just super duper intelligent and he can't get a regular job, but for reasons that weren't his own. It was just because of his prison record. He made a mistake when he was younger. Why can't he be forgiven? It's the society. Like, I'm not no therapist or anything. Even though the story is being told to us by Melinda and we are sitting in the therapist chair, it feels like she got with a narcissist. And if the narcissist had an opportunity to write out his fantasy and everything go exactly the way that he intended for it to go, this would be it. You should have forgave him. You should have took him back. You shouldn't have listened to your family. They're stupid. They don't know anything. This scene, Taraji comes back to this man after Mr. Prescott gives him a chance. And not only does he not buy the IP or the intellectual property of his one invention that he made, he just licenses it out for a ton of money. And now not only is this man extremely wealthy, he's got a new woman and he would manage to get that woman pregnant. Look at this actor's face in this scene so Taraji has come crawling back and she's wearing her cutest little outfit under a coat and he's uncomfortable, but it looks like he's trying to stifle a smile here. Man's new woman comes into the door. This lucky narcissist gets to watch sparks fly as his new thing and his old thing go at it. Melinda is successfully driven crazy and the movie ends with her dying. So I don't know how Tyler Perry wants us to feel, but I definitely know that if you look at this entire movie as if it's a narcissist fantasy, it makes perfect sense. All you got to do is just stick it out, let him cheat. He might get rich. Don't lose your temper. He might get rich. Risk it all. He might get rich. So yeah, my verdict on this movie is that it is a narcissistic fantasy. Throw it in the trash or put it in a test tube so it can be studied, because it is not to be consumed with any amount of seriousness. Well, technically, she was no longer Mrs. Gale. She was now back to her maiden name, which was Moore. I closed up on that check when he handed it to her because I have bad vision. I wanted to see what it said. And yes, she was Melinda Moore. And that's another thing about this movie is that when he's like, I'm going to name the boat Mrs. Gale after you. No, anybody who marries that man is Mrs. Gale. Anybody that marries him and takes on his last name is an extension of him. So it was a very egocentric move, and everything points to this man being a narcissist. I'm telling y'all. She would have just been lucky to take that $10 million and get out of there with her life intact. Okay, so that's fair. Maybe the message wasn't side with your man, but the issues were definitely not nuanced in this movie. This character was problematic from the get-go. He isolated this young woman. He did a number of things that after a while, it was just like, there's no redemption arc for this character. And so if the message is not side with your man, again, it's a really confusing message, because what was the point of all of this? Like, what in the world was the running theme with this? There were several elements in this movie that kind of show that a lot of the bad things that happened to Robert were because of society. As a young black man in America with a prison record, he struggles to find a job. And then on top of that, like from a young age, he's kind of had to be very independent. And so there's a number of things that kind of show that there are some societal issues that impact the way that he is. But there's a lack of personal responsibility when it comes to this character. And it was confusing to me how much sympathy we were supposed to have for him. He's asking Melinda to give and give and give, and he's taking and taking and taking. And at some point, it's like, okay, where does this go? What is the point? Where is the nuisance, the nuance? I know nuisance was a typo, but it's kind of, I mean, he's a nuisance. This guy was a nuisance. The one thing that I will say is that Melinda's not accepting that $10 million. To me, that was kind of heavy-handed and showing that she was greedy. She felt like she was owed more, and it was just, if she was truly over this guy, she would have took that $10 million and happily left out of his life. But she was still kind of in love with him, I think. I don't know. Whatever the case was, I was very, very confused, because is this woman traumatized or is she not? Did she really never want to see him again or not? Personally, if any of my exes were to offer me $10 million, I don't care if they have $1 billion. I'll take the $10 million and leave. You will never see me again. $10 million is quite enough. I'll take it. So for her to want the $10 million and then want half of whatever he gets and then try to get back together with him, to me, it just sounded like greed. And that's where her character is not very sympathetic whatsoever. She got her house back. I mean, there was a scene, I think, where she's like, all I want is my 1,234,000 or something like that. And I thought it was funny because it was like 1, 2, 3, 4. But either way, she had a very specific amount for what she wanted, and he gave her $10 million and her house back. So from there, you really got to ask the question of, what does she really want? You know what I mean? Was getting back with him about the money, was getting back with him about him. One thing that she complained about also was this man, Robert, had mastered her body, and her old ex, Derek, he didn't do it like how Robert did. So it's just, it was very confusing. And I get what you're saying about nuance, but again, this guy was irredeemable. Robert was irredeemable. He drove her crazy. That is an argument that one can make. I think that would hold up in court, her being able to say that she had temporary insanity. But Robert was a menace the entire movie. Melinda does say in the beginning of the movie that she wasn't very book smart. That was her sister's. And so it's kind of implied that she's not the brightest, and her actions kind of show that to be the case. And she also has a really horrible temper, and this whole movie kind of shows that to be the case as well. But Robert was very narcissist coded, and this whole movie is like a dream come true for a narcissist. This is like the fantasy, in my opinion, of what a narcissist would come up with. And I don't know what that says about Tyler Perry. And like you said, perhaps the message isn't for us as women to side with our men no matter what. But I have heard Tyler Perry say some things that shows that he does think that women should give men a chance, regardless of if those men are stepping up. The entire movie, this man is betting on beating the odds. And so he's been building this battery, and being that Tyler Perry writes all of his movies and stuff, there's not a lot of research done. There's this one scene that cracks me up where he's in the meeting with Mr. Prescott, and he's like wrapping it up, and he's like the tubes and the things.
Lipo and nickel and the guilt was
Okay. I've heard enough.
So later on, when Mr. Prescott licenses his idea and he tells Melinda, he says, "My idea hit." Kind of like he hit the lottery. Not "my idea has been licensed." My idea hits. This is a fantasy. This entire movie is a fantasy. And even though Melinda is the one telling it from her perspective, this is all in the world, in the mind, in the imagination of a narcissist. His idea hitting, him winning the lottery, him some magical windfall happening, and him being able to watch his ex who didn't give him a chance, who didn't stick it out with him, who didn't believe all his lies about the cheating and the, "Oh no, I didn't do this or didn't do that, and you just got to believe in me." This is literally just, it's textbook. So if you ever want to know how a narcissist thinks, this movie would make so much sense. But outside of that, us trying to understand what Tyler Perry's message is, I don't think we're ever going to learn it. Whether he wants us to side with the man or not, it doesn't matter, because I do believe that narcissists know when they're wrong. They know when they're destroying a person. It's like they know when they're doing that, and that's what we're seeing with Melinda's character. She abandons herself. She abandons her family. She abandons the house that her deceased mother left to her. She gives up all her money. Like literally, he is making her part with everything that she holds near and dear. This man knowingly did it. Not a tear fell from his eye the entire movie. He was just like, "Well, you know, if you love me, you're gonna do this." She does it and loses everything, and then later on, she's the one that dies. She's the one that pays because he hits it big with his idea. He should have gotten a real job. If he was a true inventor, he should have gotten a day job that showcased his intelligence. He can't work washing dishes while he's with her, but he can try to sell, he can make a battery that powers whatever and get millions and hundreds of millions of dollars for this discovery. Come on. I'm sorry. I'm not buying. So I don't know what Tyler's message was with this one, but it was a cluster F, and the only way that it makes sense is if you understand that this is a fantasy that a narcissist would come up with. So that's it. I feel like I've been saying the same thing over and over again, so I apologize if I keep repeating myself. But, I appreciate the commentary on this video, though, because it's been a really interesting one to re-watch.